as I was saying before, yesterday, now I have different hair, but it's the same conversation. So in terms of speaking their language, you want to make sure that everything matches. The name of the game here is familiarity. You want to speak their language because you want to sound familiar to them, your target audience, your target avatar. If they say things like comfortable instead of, wealthy, or they use words like high net worth instead of super rich, then you want to use the terms that they use. You want to, even down to the way that they say these things, like the very musicality of their voice, whether written or oral. You want to mimic that whole attitude, that whole being, and you want to do so at the place where they will be found, where your audience will be found. If your audience are parents, right? Like, for example, my audience, a lot of them are parents. Find them at school, find them at the pediatrician's office, find them where they are and speak their language. Lesson number 11, ask the right questions, be specific, ask what is needed to be asked, and do this because sales is not really about pitching the way that we normally think about it. It's really more so a practice of listening and understanding. And so you want to ask to understand. You want to ask not only for you, the person pitching and selling, to understand, but for the other person to understand if this thing that is being sold is right for them, and why, right? Like, what is the problem that they are needing to solve, and what's the benefit of this thing, and how are those things connected? Lesson 12, in the name of persuasion, is after you've sold the thing and you're in the middle of providing it, right? Whether it's a product or a service does not matter. You want to ensure fast and visible results. Because if the person on the other end of the product or service doesn't see what's happening, they can't latch on to the benefit. They've got a million things going on, maybe they're taking care of their parents, maybe they're taking care of their kids, maybe they're taking care of their bills, maybe they're taking care of all friggin' three on the same day at the same time, and there's something in the kitchen, and it's a lot, right? So what you need to do as the person who has provided them with this service or product is to ensure that they can see the results and quickly. And so one way to do this is to break up the goal and have a first milestone, and that first milestone be celebrated. If this is a digital service or product, you can have confetti, balloons. When I start working with a client, I like to welcome them in and celebrate them even showing up to the first meeting. The last meeting I had, I actually got up and did trumpet sounds. I didn't have a trumpet. There was no confetti, but I mimicked a trumpet, and I was like, burr, 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 and I did confetti. And just in doing that, the other person on the other end of the call smiled, they laughed, and it broke the ice. And so that's a pretty bad example, but it's still a decent example, because what you're doing is you're providing fast and visible results to make sure that whatever promise you're promising, they see that it's being enacted. Lesson number 13. This is similar. This is like an extension of lesson 12, is that people like easy. So don't just make it fast and visible, make it easy. Make every step of the process as easy as possible. And mind you, some things are inherently strenuous and on purpose, right? I would say Off the Beaten Path is an inherently strenuous program. I mean, it's strenuous in the way that you desire it. Nobody is forced into Off the Beaten Path. Everybody chooses to go off the beaten path who goes off the beaten path. You want to make it every step of the process super easy. So easy to pay, easy to understand what's happening, easy to use, right? So have a demo where they can see how it's being used. And it's interesting, a good example of this that I just shared with a client, there was a commercial that my friend shared with me because I absolutely love Milano's. The cookie, I think it's Pepperidge Farm. The Pepperidge Farm cookie called Milano's. They have different flavors now. They didn't used to, but now they have a classic is mint, but they also have like pineapple. Doesn't matter. I love these cookies. Point is, there is an advertisement back in the day that my friend sent me, and it was a commercial of a woman in a bathtub eating cookies, and her kids are screaming outside the door and saying like, Mom, Mom, calling for her. And she's just smiling and eating these cookies as if none of that is happening. That is an effective demo. It's an effective demo because it's showing you how to eat the cookie and enjoy the cookie. And what's interesting too is that it's also flipping the switch on something which is often moms feel bad about. The reason I shared it with my client was because she was experiencing some level of guilt, perhaps. She didn't say that word, so I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she was experiencing some kind of, hesitation or difficult emotion around boundaries between work and family. And so I mentioned to her, like, sometimes you just gotta eat Milanos in a bathtub, and unless there's an actual emergency outside. And so that was a wonderful demo. Like, Pepperidge Farm, if that is the company that owns Milanos, did a great job. Lesson 14 is always negotiate. Always negotiate wherever you go. This is a lesson from Noah Kagan, who wrote $1 Million Weekend. And he says to always negotiate, not necessarily to save yourself money or anything like that, but to practice the art of persuasion and negotiation. There's always room for a better deal, always. And just practicing that muscle is a really good muscle to practice, especially when you're in business. The first lesson here, lesson 15, is who, not how. Dan Sullivan, the formula to achieve bigger goals through accelerating teamwork. It's about people. It's not about strategy. It's about people. Strategy only goes anywhere because of people. And so you want the right people so that you can solve problems faster and better. Strategy alone is an idea. It's not cannot be executed without a person, to some extent anyway. I mean, even if you have a machine. Lesson 16 is about how you as the business owner are the bottleneck of the business. So anything that is your weak point, any weakness that you may have, for me, for example, it's like resource management, and I would say leadership are the things I struggle with the most, perhaps operations as well. And so the business is limited by the person who is the captain of the ship. And this is, to some extent, I guess, obvious, but what you do about it is you make sure that you attack those points. Those are your leverage points. Because if you can either find a way to step aside and let someone else take over that weak point, or improve, right, level up so that the weak point is no longer a weak point. But one way or another, you want to make sure that you address that bottleneck. Lesson 17, hire smarter. What does that mean? It means hire smarter than you. This is related, I would say, to the last lesson about the bottleneck and how you are the bottleneck of the business. You want to make sure that you spend a lot of time on hiring really carefully, and that you hire people that are A players. One example of how I've done this is I took a lot of time on editing, like a lot of time on editing these videos for this YouTube channel. And I met someone, the person who's editing this video right now, and his name is Ayel, and he is smarter at video editing than I am. And it's not just the actual edits that have been better, it's even the consultation about how to optimize the channel has really leveled up. We've grown, the channel has grown since he's joined the team, and it has grown quite a bit, more than it ever has before. And I think that's because the intelligence in that specialized way is, without that, it would have remained stuck and would be progressing at the same extremely slow rate that it was progressing. Lesson 18, very similar, is raise the bar for everyone. Set the standard and then meet the standard. Standards are incredibly important, and without them, we will falter. So make sure to have high standards for yourself and for your business. That means be professional, be presentable. Lesson 19 is be presentable. So just as you are raising those standards, meeting those standards, part of those standards is be presentable. And I've talked about this before in terms of networking, especially when you are a business owner and you are leading the charge for this campaign, for this project, for this mission. You want to, people like a good package, right? If you have the best tasting pasta in the world and you package it like ass, no one's going to want to try it. Immediately, the appetite just diminishes. Packaging is really important, and packaging of yourself is equally really important. So I would even say right now, I'm not a great example of this. I'm in a sweater, the camera is not picking it up very well, my hair is up instead of down. I'm alright, but it could be better. So I'm not a great example of this lesson at the current moment. Lesson 20, stay fucking ready, stay prepared. Some people say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I would agree with that statement. So you want to stay prepared. Whatever it is you wish for, make sure you're prepared for it. Because when and if it comes to pass, if you're not prepared, you can wish all you want, it's not going to happen. Lesson 21. In terms of strategy, the first thing you want to make sure you get done is the basics. Don't forget about the basics. Not necessarily the first thing, but don't forget about the basics. Basics for a business owner are really about your health. And it's interesting because I've heard some different stuff around this. Like recently, Mr. Beast was in an interview with Stephen Bartlett, Diary of CEO. And he said, my mental health is not a priority. And if it was, I wouldn't be where I am. What's interesting to me is that he also mentioned exercise and how he hasn't been exercising the way he wants to, but it would be simple enough to find 45 minutes 5 times a week for him to fit into his very, very busy life. So his mental health is not a priority, but his physical health is. He can determine that for himself. It sounds like everyone is different. And for him, that's what is doing the basics, is exercise. Mental health, not as important. To me, what that says is that his baseline mental health is stronger than his physical, since his physical needs more of the basics. He pays more attention to his physical health.